Hi again, everybody. This video is sponsored by contribution from Moose, and here's her story. Dear Ollie, my name is Moose, and I've been watching your channel for quite some time now. Your channel has helped me recognize narcissism in others. This revelation is both insightful yet frustrating. I've enclosed the contribution, signed up for the $1 a month fund, and I also plan to contribute more once I get a steady job. If you have the time and energy, and if your voice is up to par, I'd really appreciate if you could read my story on your channel. I want to get my story out there, and I believe it may be relatable to those who have experienced the same thing. I am a 20-something-year-old female finishing up my license to become a teacher. At the moment, I am living in an apartment with my mother, grandmother, and little brother after being forced out by my stepfather, who I believe is a narcissist. I believe it's important to help you understand my background so you get a better picture of the story. I was born in Russia to my mother, who had me when she was only 20. My alcoholic biological father divorced my mother after I was born. He thought that he was taking care of a child was too much of a hassle. To this date, my biological child has abandoned 4 other women in his life, leaving behind many other children in the same way he left me. I don't know how many half-siblings I have at this point. Anyways, after the divorce, my mother, grandmother, and I moved to America in hopes to find a better life. Growing up, my small family lived in poverty. We might have not had much money for toys nor heat in the winter, but the one thing my family was never impoverished of was love and acceptance. My mother and grandmother always had a lot of love to give. They have unconditional love for me and my little brother. I only want to see us succeed in our lives, encourage our creative minds, unlike any narcissist. However, their love and generosity only seems to hook in narcissistic men to their lives. My grandmother divorced her physically abusive husband and remarried to an emotionally abusive husband instead. She moved in with him to the South when I was 7 years old. Whenever she would come back upstate to visit me and my mom, there would always be incessant phone calls from him. He had to have full control over her. Also, he was emotionally abusive. He forced you to pay attention to a minute detail at hand, to a minute detail at hand, then blew the situation out of proportion, saying that you ruined his entire day, and then verbally abused and threatened you. Sometimes I visited my grandmother's house for summer breaks while my single-parent mother worked and was a full-time student. There's one incident that I only remembered when I was digging through photo albums of the one time that I visited during the summer. My grandfather and grandmother took me down to the lake, equipped with a camera and a green donut floaty. This particular day was very hot and the sun shone like crazy. My grandfather asked me to lay down on the green floaty so that he could take a picture. Try as I might, I couldn't open my eyes for the photo due to the sun shining directly in my face. Also, I couldn't quite put my hand over my face to cover the sunlight because I would lose balance and fall off the floaty. He kept yelling at me to open my eyes for the picture. I told him that I couldn't. The sun was too bright, but he kept screaming at me and telling me that I'm doing this on purpose. And he asked me, "Why are you ruining a good photo op?" and saying, you're so spoiled. He hit my nerves and I was emotionally incapable of dealing with the situation. My grandma overheard this, rushed over and told him that the sun was indeed too bright. I was crying and trying to explain to him, but he wouldn't listen because for him, children are meant to be seen and not heard, a phrase he often loved to use. Some other sayings he loved to use was, "It's my way or the highway," and "I'm right even when I'm wrong." Wow, right out of your grandfather, my father, does that mean enormous? Anyways, he would hear none of it and told us that we were leaving the beach immediately because of my behavior. So when we got home, My grandfather screamed at my grandmother and I, calling me a brat, saying that I ruined his day on purpose. I remember him yelling at my grandmother and telling her that he wanted a divorce because of the way her granddaughter was treating him and how she had the audacity to stick up for me. He told us to pack our bags and said that he was going to kick us out of the house. However, he kind of realized that he just couldn't kick us out. Instead, he left to get himself some dinner. And when he came back later that evening, he acted like everything was normal again. This was a cycle that happened over and over and over again. I can recall many similar events like this, which just left my grandmother and I emotionally drained, trying to keep the peace. At the time, I thought this was normal, and I just walked on eggshells around him. In the end, my grandmother divorced him. It's funny, my grandmother asked him for a small amount of money as compensation for divorce, but he spent 4 times that much money just to pay lawyers to say she was left with nothing. He didn't care how much he spent on lawyers as long as none of that money went to her. But you know what's really funny? Saying death by 1,000 cuts. All 5 of his previous wives had died of heart attacks. I'm sure they died from heart attacks because of constant emotional abuse. I'm glad my grandmother was able to divorce him before her heart failed too, due to his emotional abuse. Or due to him being a serial killer. 5 women all died of heart attacks. 5? Is your grandfather Bill Clinton? Now let me tell you about my stepfather. Unlike my grandmother's ex-husband, my stepdad is not an overt narcissist, so it's difficult to call him a narcissist at all. My mother and stepfather have been together for a decade, but are now in the process of getting a divorce. The divorce has been messy, and everywhere we learn about the kind of shitty person he is. So when my mother finished her education, she stopped scrubbing toilets and became a computer programmer. My mother and I never cared about money, but her job let us live very comfortably. Then, when I was 10 years old, my mother met and married a man who is now my stepdad. My stepdad is always soft spoken and seems kind and gentle to any outsider. Because of their high combined income, my mother and stepfather bought a house together. It's important to mention that we moved to the house. His 2 cats came along with him. He would buy the cheapest possible food for them and never bother to take them to the vet. They were mangy, skinny, ridden with fleas, and had tangled up fur that foamed into dreads. My mother hates cats, but she cares about living things. She was the one to take them to the vet, buy a flea collar, and buy cat food that wasn't 25 cents a pound. Those kitties became so beautiful under her care, but stepdad barely noticed or cared. I wonder why he got the cats in the first place. Next, I wonder why he decided that having a child was a good idea, but perhaps he would treat his family better than he treated animals. Nope. Although I don't know the details of how he acted towards my mother, he would always act passive-aggressively towards me as a teenager. The most vivid memory of him saying something hurtful towards me in my teenage years was during my prom night. That day is special for any 17-year-old girl. I got my hair cut and did my makeup for the first time ever. The only comment he had to say to me was, "It doesn't matter that you did your hair and makeup. You still look fat." Although I have never been fat, my self-esteem was shot down from that comment. Also, anytime I would come down to the kitchen at midnight when he was home, he would pick up a knife and pretend to stab me with a razor-sharp butcher knife. Ha ha, very funny. Then I thought to myself, well, maybe he would treat his offspring of his own flesh and blood better than he treated animals or stepchildren. Nope. So your grandmother ends up with a guy who had 5 wives die of a heart attack, and your mother marries a guy. You seeing a pattern here? Not only does your mother and grandmother attract narcissists, they attract dangerous, violent narcissists, murderous narcissists. When I was a teenager, my little brother was born. As soon as he was born, my stepdad got too busy with work. He started to regularly come home at 11 o'clock at night and was often absent on the weekends. He told everyone that he was too busy with work. However, we all know the truth that he simply did not want to spend any time and help take care of his own son. We also later learned that a majority of his workday consisted of him hanging out and going to happy hour. Did I mention that my stepdad founded and manages a sex toy company? He's a millionaire, but does a damn good job hiding his money and assets. Also, did I mention that his daughter from a previous marriage tests out these sex toys and helps him write reviews? Even though my father was barely home, he still kept tabs on us at home. Well, one day my stepdad put up a nice antique clock in our main living area. How lovely and innocent, right? Nope. About a year after its appearance in the kitchen, my mom goes into the office and sees that he forgot to turn off his computer. Can you guess what he saw on the computer? Webcam, a live stream video of our living area. The clock was bugged. He could remotely watch everything that was happening in our household. He tried to pay it off like it was just a security camera. However, security cameras belong outside the house or pointed at doorways, not pointed at the dinner table. We have no idea how many other bugs he placed in the house. Also recently, my mom found 4 hidden cameras shaped like electrical outlets in their packaging in plain sight in the back seat of his car. I believe that he had hidden cameras around the house to ever catch my mom having an affair, something she would never ever do and never did, at least to my knowledge. He owns a sex toy company. He's got hidden cameras all over the house he's not telling anybody about. No, he's not worried about an affair. He's a jacker. He's jacking his dick, hoping he sees something. Recently, we realized that my stepfather has been lying about the whereabouts of little brother and him on the weekends. My little brother came crying to mom one day saying that his dad has been threatening him and saying that his dad will stop buying him toys if he says where they go on weekends. Apparently, my stepfather has been taking him to his workplace, the place he sells sex toys. How disgusting is that? I don't know if my brother really understands anything. But to take a child to that kind of establishment is not only illegal, I think, but morally reprehensible. Now my parents are in the process of a divorce. It was my stepfather's idea for the divorce. A few months ago, he handed my mother divorce papers out of the blue. He had already hired a lawyer and claimed that he wanted to half joint physical custody of my little brother. What? Makes no sense. My father spends maybe 5 hours a week with him tops, and now he's requesting half-joint physical custody. The only reason behind him wanting half-joint physical custody was because he would pay for the smallest amount of child support. It's always about money with this man. My mother refused to sign the divorce papers and hired her own lawyer instead. It has been a long, tedious process. A month or two ago, my stepfather threatened my mother, and she called the cops on him. Because there was no proof of assault, he was not penalized. However, the cops and her lawyer said that if there was a witness to the death threat, the comment would have landed him in jail. With the consult of a lawyer, my mother and grandmother and little brother and I moved out of the house after this incident and into an apartment. My stepfather couldn't be overjoyed. He hasn't seen his son of flesh and blood in weeks, and he is bragging to his side of the family that this is the happiest time of his life. Since we moved out, my mom's home alarm system and her phone have been showing that he's been coming home at 6 p.m. every day, in contrast to him only ever coming home close to midnight, and bragging to the 7-year-old over the speakerphone that he has the whole entire house to himself. What kind of father would be happy that he hasn't seen his own child in weeks. One like your biological father, who did the same thing to you and other children, who your mother is in this pattern of bringing in these abandoning type of narcissistic men. However, tomorrow, his little no family dream will end, because with the consult of my mom's lawyer, we will all be moving back into the house. A portion of the house will have a legal restraining order from my stepfather, however. Anyways, this is all very confusing. I just hope the divorce process is finalized soon. Perhaps I'll move out and get married myself before the process is finished and the house is sold. My mother has virtually no contact with him, and all communication is done through lawyers. She is also hiring a private investigator to look into his hidden assets, because my stepfather magically claimed bankruptcy even though his company is absolutely booming with sales, and the stock for his business has been growing exponentially. This man only cares about money and will only ever care about money and himself. So that's my story, all the hidden cameras, taking a child to a sex toy company, death threats, lies, deceit, hiding assets, no empathy for pets or children. I still can't quite call him a narcissist because he isn't overt like my grandfather was. He's too soft-spoken and appears meek. All I can hope for is that the man I marry in the future will not be like my mother or grandmother's past husbands. Also, I hope that my little brother grows up and doesn't think that this kind of narcissistic mentality is acceptable. If you have any insight on my situation and any tips for tomorrow and onwards on how to handle occupying the same space until my as my stepfather, until the divorce process is finalized and the house is sold, I appreciate it. Thank you for reading my story, Ollie. Sincerely, Moose. P.S. Your channel is amazing, and I hope you continue to bring support to NPD survivors. I have a quick update to this story since my mother, grandmother, and brother and I have moved back into the house. You can add this to my original email. Since we moved in, we all decided to mainly live in the basement of the house. As I have previously mentioned, the courts ruled that my stepfather is not allowed to go down into the basement. So we all been eating, sleeping and eating there. In order to have minimal contact with him, my mom and I went to buy meats, fruits, wine, frozen dinners, and put the groceries into the basement refrigerator, which has always been plugged in, working for the past decade fine. The other day we found the fridge had been unplugged and the food had been removed. The groceries weren't even moved to the upstairs kitchen. My stepdad had obviously ignored the fact that he was legally unallowed in the basement and proceeded to steal the groceries. We can't even put up a hidden camera to catch him in the act next time, because my mother has specifically requested in the court that no hidden cameras are allowed in the house, period. Yeah, but it's not a hidden camera. A webcam on your laptop left open is not a hidden, it's in plain view. I'd leave that recording nonstop. That is not a hidden camera. That is a camera in plain view. The other thing my father did was change the password to the house security system but not tell anyone. So when my mom used the keys to get into the house this morning when no one else was home, the alarm went off and the police ended up showing up. It ended up being okay, but there was no reason for the password to be changed, except for that my stepfather wanted to inconvenience and waste her time. I'm almost not surprised that my stepfather did this, considering all the things he has done before. But it is still surprising because he is a skinny little man that always talks in a calm voice and doesn't ever raise his voice or engage physically. It's all very confusing. Anyways, that's my update. If you can analyze or give me any advice to living in the same house as this man, I'd appreciate it. Moose. P.S. Thanks in advance. If you end up making a video of this story, I will contribute more in the future. I would ask your lawyer, there's a big difference between a hidden covert camera and a camera out in the open. You can leave a laptop open in plain view and just let it record. Does it say no recording whatsoever or no hidden cameras? And I'm surprised the police didn't do anything about the food. I would really put, because then now you got to break in. And it's probably why he changed the security code to try to make you act like you're crazy. Oh, let me change the security code. Somebody came in and stole your food and unplugged the refrigerator. I would push that with the cops. I'd be like, no, fuck that. I want to file charges for my missing food, and I want to charge him. If there's no sign of break-in, okay, if there's no sign of break-in and nobody else has access to the house, it can only have been him. It can have only have been him. If he cares so much about money and he feels that somebody broke in, then I would have your mother demand that he change all the locks on the house and give you the keys through the attorney. Because if he's so concerned about money, he wants to play his little fucking games. Or the lawyer can say you either replace the money for the food or you can change the locks on the door. You got to know how to hit him. You got to know, because he's all concerned about money and control. Okay, well, you got a break-in here. What happened to my food? Somebody else took it, so you're saying there was a break-in. Okay, then I'm going to need all the locks changed. Well, no, changing the alarm security code isn't going to help. Need the locks changed, need them all changed, because somebody has access to here that shouldn't then. I would push this with the lawyer because there's nobody else who could have gained access. And if the cops won't do anything, then I would go through the lawyer and demand all the locks be changed. The fact that he doesn't yell and scream has nothing to do with whether or not he's a narcissist. He's an obvious, covert, narcissistic pervert. That's how these wanker types, these sex-obsessed wanker types are. They're never usually outwardly aggressive. They're always these meek little fucking loser skinny boys, like real creepy. Not all of them, but for the most part. That's narcissism. All his tactics scream of narcissism. Your deal now is you're trying to get your mother to this divorce process and past it. Because if you let him get away with this, it's going to continue. He's not going to stop because he, like I said in a video yesterday, the narcissists think they can outsmart the law always. Well, I would have your mother call the lawyer and demand the locks be changed. If he didn't do it, then have your mother call the police back here and say, then I need to report a break-in because we made bought X amount of hundreds of dollars of groceries or whatever it was. The thing's unplugged. Somebody came in here. The three of us didn't do it. He's the only one with access to the house, so I'm going to need a police report and report a break-in. And then you might actually see the cop at that point turn to the husband and say, you better give her the fucking money or the groceries back and stay the hell out of here and riot. Because when you make the cops actually do their job, then they might actually get you some. But if that doesn't happen, call your lawyer and say, I want all the locks changed because then somebody's coming in here. Throw the narcissist game back in their faces sometimes, and you'll win. Thank you for your story, and thank you for your contribution. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any advice or opinions in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a narcissist you'd like me to expose or a topic you'd like me to cover, you know what to do with the PayPal and my email links in the description box. I'll have the video right back to you. This is Ollie Matthews. Thanks for watching. See you all again soon.